Hi, I'm Stefan from Vulture, and my favorite band of all time is SLAYER.
Tiny influence of SLAYER on Vulture's music. Just
Might
if you
be.
look really, really hard, you might find a little bit.
A little hint here and there. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Stefan, you were definitely not already, a rowdy teenager on a Los Angeles parking lot in the early '80s, looking at what would become SLAYER. So let's start at the start. How did you discover SLAYER?
I discovered SLAYER after getting introduced into heavy metal quite early. I think my first contact with harder music was when I got my first stereo for my 9th birthday. I got the Deep Purple made in Japan, and a few years later, when my girlfriend my sister had a boyfriend. My sister had a boyfriend who was playing in a heavy metal band, and he introduced me into this kind of music, and got my first CDs like Destruction, Eternal Devastation, pretty soon after I had my hands on God Hates Us All. That was my first contact with SLAYER, and I could not really understand the hype about SLAYER because I obviously grabbed the wrong one, and then but a few months later I had Rain and Blood from my local CD supplier, and I was hooked right away.
Yeah, no, I remember those days, like the God Hates Us All. That's 2000, 2001, something like that.
2001, 11th September 2001.
There you go. Yeah. Did you have your hands on the vinyl with the Bible with the nails nailed into the Bible? No.
I was not into vinyl back then. I only had a CD player.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I mean, we'll just park also the fact that your parents gave you Made in Japan, which is a fantastic place to start in your musical journey. I mean, it can only go downhill from there, really. But but you found SLAYER, so we're gonna focus on SLAYER. How soon after did you wanted to play music that was inspired by these more earlier SLAYER sounds? Because we were joking, Vulture, there is a little bit of SLAYER in there. It's not just SLAYER, obviously. Vulture brings this really cool mix of early thrash, and there's Wabum in there. We hear some Iron Maiden bass gallops there as well. It's a cocktail of everything that was great about the early '80s, if you will, in a modern touch. So how soon after did you get that bug for yourself that you're like, I want to make this music myself?
Right away.
Right away.
For me, as soon as I heard this kind of music, I felt the urge to try and play it myself. Obviously, thrash metal is not the easiest genre to start music with, but I got into it right away, and I think I don't know, like I had my first guitar already, and had my first lessons already, and then started the band right away, and and I started out with after a few months I started out right away with thrash metal.
The first introduction was God Hates Us All, but then very quickly after you found the gem that is Raining Blood, which depending on who you ask, but a lot of people will say that it is if not one of at the very least one of the, but if not the thrash metal album of all time. Fair to assume then if I'm going to ask you about a couple of songs that are really important for you, as a SLAYER fan, that at least one of the songs is gonna be on that album?
To be honest, I don't think so.
Oh,
of course, every single song on the record is absolutely amazing. If I would have to pick one, I would probably go with Altar of Sacrifice. You know what? Altar of Sacrifice, definitely. This is one of the best SLAYER songs. My very, very favorite SLAYER release, if we include EPs, is definitely Haunting the Chapel. Okay. And my very favorite album is definitely Hell Awaits.
Okay. Well, so before we go into Hell Awaits, then maybe and talk about some specific songs, I do have to ask you, as one Slayer fan to the other, how little alcohol is needed for you to attempt the Angel Scream?
Oh, I don't get that high. At every party, everybody is always doing it, and I tried several times, and
No voice in the morning.
No voice in the morning, and I said the next time this is going to happen, I'm just going to enjoy seeing the guys do it, and I'll back off.
Yeah.
I don't get that high. I wish I could. I try several times when I'm in the car listening, I don't know, to Agent Steel or stuff. I always try to get there to some degree, but there is a definite limit, and I'm very sad about it though.
You already said my favorite release, full album release, is Hell Awaits.
Yeah.
Do we find a song there?
Dawn They Sleep. Definitely.
Awesome.
The whole concept of the song and the way they approach this topic, and most importantly, the very eerie lyrics. I think this might be the best heavy metal lyrics of all time. And this whole approach, it sounds very medieval. It sounds dark. It sounds dangerous, over the top, and the whole way they I don't know. Hell Awaits is a one-off record. There is no record on earth that sounds at least a bit like Hell Awaits, and that's I think it's so absolutely fascinating when you compare Show No Mercy to Hell Awaits and see what gigantic step they made out of absolutely nowhere. And it's exactly that energy or that spark that they had or must have had that I think is so interesting when it comes to this music.
There's so many people that say Slayer was always Slayer. Slayer never changed. Anthrax and Megadeth and Metallica, they all tried to reinvent themselves, but Slayer never did. But that is really not true. There's so many different sides to Slayer. And Hell Awaits almost has a doomy, atmosphere.
Yeah, definitely.
With Vulture and maybe the broader, this whole revival of bands that bring us, some really cool sounds of the 80s back into the 2020s, if you will. There's a similarity there, because on this new album, you guys also have evolved your sound. In your case, the gas pedal was pushed in completely on this record. But I know that it has bothered Slayer members over the years, that people were like, you just do the same thing over and over. Is that something that, if you look at yourself, can that be a frustration as well, where people will go prog metal fans will say these, new wave of traditional heavy metal bands, they just do what's been done before. But if you actually do listen to the albums, there is always an evolution. How is that for you as an artist?
Yeah, I feel that very much. And it's always also to some degree bothers me, and also found its way into our songwriting, because I think I don't know when we signed with Metal Blade in 2017 or something, we really felt the urge to be different, to be a little more, to not be normal, to be do the extra step, and that resulted in very, very tricky songwriting, very self-doubting moments, and in the end we did a record that we're not 100% comfortable with, and that's something we tried, or I think we now also achieved, tried to check it off and say we do the music we would like to hear as fans, and don't really care about what people that are not into this very specific niche of thrash metal say. So we are. At least I can only speak for myself. At least I feel much freer now, if you can say so. Much more comfortable with songwriting and with the stuff we did. But definitely the point you have, it's definitely a thing to people who are not 100% into thrash metal, everything sounds the same, and that's absolutely stupid.
Every Slayer album is different, and they've had some very different periods as well. If we're gonna look at what would be a second choice for you, are we gonna stay in those 80s classics, or are we gonna go into more adventurous spots? Where do you want to go for your second?
We're gonna stay. If I take a second track, I'd probably go with the Chemical Warfare from the Haunting the Chapel EP. It's dangerous. This guitar intro. It's so the term dangerous is really important to me. I think
clearly
it sounds super dangerous, super eerie, and the song is super huge and has a lot of moments, a lot of shifts, a lot of back and forth, like a gigantic middle section with riff after riff after riff after riff, and that's sounds very, very powerful to me.
There's a very long list of bands out in the world that have band names or album names that are clearly inspired by Slayer. And I'm going to use that as a bit of a forced segue to, the Sentinels album. Like, we can go, and more of your albums, but let's stay with Sentinels. There are plenty of songs there that we could, if we wanted to look for correlations or connections, there are some Easter eggs there as well to classic metal bands, whether or not you wanted to, and maybe we're just looking for it, right? But we see on your album Transylvania, Sentinel, Oathbreaker, those are all names of albums or songs of classic bands that we've seen before. Is that on purpose, or is that just because that's what you love, that's what you're interested in, it just comes out that way?
Yeah, it just comes out that way. Obviously, when you only listen to this kind of music, the way of the inspiration is of that one side, but it's not like we try to be homage or something.
Right. It's not a tribute band.
No, not at all. And of course, we got a lot the question a lot if Sentinels itself is like a knee fall for Judas Priest. And I'm well aware that it definitely rings a bell when you hear Sentinels, that you think of that song, but also that we didn't think about that at all. Of course, Judas Priest, for example, plays a huge role for us and for us as a band, but we would never say like, okay, let's pick Sentinels as our album name, and then people will hopefully say it's going to be about Judas Priest, because we didn't think that way, and but people seem to be.
Yeah. Now, one song that does stand out for obvious reasons on the album is Der Tod trägt schwarzes Leder, or Leder, which is me, butchering the German for death wears black leather. There's a bunch of German bands these days that have had success with songs that actually have German lyrics in different styles as well. I'm thinking about, Ritter Toten Teufel from Serenity. Hammer King just released an album and a song with König und Kaiser. This obviously is an instrumental song on your album. And as far as I'm aware, on your albums at least, there has not been German language.
No.
Is that something that you might want to play with? Because language is important, and sometimes things that you say in your native language don't translate well into English. Is that something that's on the mind?
No, I saw that name. It's a name from an old Italian Giallo movie, and I had a book in my hands from a friend with all the Giallo poster stuff, and this title popped up for me and said, "Der Tod trägt schwarzes Leder." If that's not going to be a Vulture song, then I don't know. We say we definitely need to pick that, but let's definitely not sing German. So we said, okay, let's do an instrumental, like. And maybe also an instrumental that resembles that Giallo theme in some way. And I think Mattis wrote that, and I think he nailed it completely. I really love this lullaby voice atmosphere, and then the music hits, and again, it sounds super dangerous to me. I love it, but we're not going to start the German thing. I'm pretty sure. Well, we've got time for one more song from Slayer. So
Stefan, make it count. Like, if there's one last song that you want everybody that is interested in Slayer but only knows those big hits, what should they check out?
They should check out one track from Show No Mercy, definitely, and then I'm gonna go with... I'm gonna be classic, and I'm gonna be gonna go with Evil Has No Boundaries. It's still a super fast and Slayer sounding song, but you can very definitely hear the heavy metal roots and the punk rock roots in there. And if you slow the main riff down, you get some Maiden hints here and there, and I think that's very cool. And if you want to understand Slayer, you will not be able to you'll have to listen to that, and you have to notice it.
And I love that you chose that song, because there are a few songs that are a better, perfect example of what Vulture is all about. Yes, it's thrashy, but it's also a little bit of heavy metal in there, and it's a little bit different. And obviously the title of that song itself can just be a description of what Vulture wants to do. Now, album is out a few days. It's a super fun album, and you've been on the road only for a few days so far for release shows that you've happened, but the year is still young. For everybody watching this, what can they expect from Vulture in the upcoming weeks and months? Like, when can we see you live? What should we keep our eyes open for?
Yeah, we were supposed to play South America in a few weeks, but that's not gonna happen.
That has been,
yeah, super sad. So the big plan we had for this year is kind of gone, and we try to make it count nevertheless, and are looking for a lot of great club shows around Europe. Might have something up our sleeves for the end of the year, but that's nothing really to talk about. We'll just be happy to play as many cool shows as possible. We're gonna stay in Europe, unfortunately this year, and I'm looking super ahead for example, a show in Belgium in a few weeks. Hagen's Awakening, I think it's called. We're gonna play a festival with Sodom. That's gonna be very cool.
Well, it's festivals like Keep It True and Huygens that are clearly a catalyst for this, new wave of traditional or new wave of thrash metal to really blossom in Europe. And we're starting to see that here as well in North America. We've got Hell's Heroes here.
Hell's Heroes, Oh, amazing.
Which is cool. And so we need you to play that festival, because you would be a perfect fit. Stefan, thank you so much for allowing us to ask you some different questions. But super excited to see more shows announced, and I keep my fingers crossed that I will see you on a stage this year. So,
thank you, man. You're welcome. Thank you.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it, and subscribe to the channel.